I grew up in a small town nestled in the Midwest, where tradition ran deep, and expectations for boys were set in stone long before they were old enough to challenge them. As a child, I remember my days filled with soccer games, tree climbing, and scuffed knees, a textbook boyhood that, from the outside, fit perfectly into the mold set for me. But inside, something was different, something unspoken, something that I barely had words for at the time. My earliest memory of feeling other was at 5 years old. I remember sitting on the edge of my mother's bed, watching her get ready for an evening out. She stood in front of the mirror, applying makeup with delicate precision, slipping on her high heels with an elegance that left me mesmerized. There was something enchanting about it, something that made my heart flutter in a way I didn't understand then. I was drawn to the beauty, the softness, the grace that seemed so alien to my world. At the time, I didn't know the word for what I was feeling. I just knew that I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to feel that same elegance, that same beauty. But in the world I lived in, boys didn't wear dresses. Boys didn't wear makeup. And boys certainly didn't express any desire to look or act feminine. I quickly learned to bury those feelings deep inside. Even at a young age, I knew that what I was feeling wasn't right by society's standards. I was supposed to be rough and tumble, to revel in my boyhood, but the more I tried to fit that mold, the more I felt a profound sense of disconnection. As I grew older, the pressure to conform became more intense. Adolescence arrived like a storm, sweeping me up in a whirlwind of physical changes and emotional confusion. My body grew taller and broader, my voice deepened, and the world around me expected me to embrace these markers of manhood with pride. But each change felt like a betrayal, pushing me further away from the person I felt I was inside. By the time I hit high school, the dissonance between my body and my mind had become unbearable. I was living a lie, presenting myself as a boy to the world, while secretly longing for something different, something more authentic. I would steal moments in my mother's closet when no one was home, trying on her dresses and shoes, feeling both exhilaration and guilt. Each time I dressed in her clothes, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. For those brief moments, I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't.
I was just me.
But as soon as I took the clothes off and returned to my male persona, the guilt would return with a vengeance. Was I weird? Was I wrong? Why couldn't I just be like the other boys? The internal battle raged on, and the fear of being discovered kept me on edge. In a town as small as mine, being different was dangerous. I knew the bullying, the ostracization, and the whispers that would follow if anyone found out. So, I kept my secret buried deep, hoping that one day, the feelings would just disappear. But they didn't. Leaving for college was like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in my life, I was in a place where no one knew me, where I could start fresh and maybe, just maybe, explore the side of myself I had kept hidden for so long. But the fear of judgment still lingered. Even in the anonymity of a large university, I was scared of being labeled a freak or a deviant. I took baby steps. First, it was wearing women's underwear underneath my clothes, an invisible rebellion against the expectations placed on me. Then, I began experimenting with makeup in the privacy of my dorm room, watching YouTube tutorials late at night, trying to master the art of eyeliner and foundation. Each step felt like a small victory, a piece of myself finally being acknowledged. It was during this time that I discovered the term Crossdresser. For the first time, I realized that I wasn't alone, that there were other people like me who felt the same dissonance between their assigned gender and the way they wanted to express themselves. I joined online forums and communities, connecting with other crossdressers and transgender individuals, finding solace in their stories. But even as I began to explore my identity in private, I still wasn't ready to fully come out. The fear of rejection, of losing friends and family, kept me in the shadows. I compartmentalized my life, living as a man during the day, while embracing my feminine side in the privacy of my dorm room. It was a double life, and it was exhausting. The first time I went out in public as a woman was one of the most terrifying and exhilarating experiences of my life. It was Halloween, the one day of the year where I could dress up as anyone I wanted without raising too many eyebrows. I spent weeks preparing for it, carefully selecting a dress, practicing my makeup, and even buying a wig. That night, as I stood in front of the mirror, fully dressed as a woman, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. I was nervous, excited, scared, and empowered all at once. For the first time in my life, I saw the person I felt like inside reflected back at me in the mirror. Walking out of my dorm room was terrifying. My heart raced as I made my way to the Halloween party, every step feeling like a monumental act of courage. I was hyper-aware of everyone around me, convinced that they were staring, judging, and laughing at me. But as the night went on, something incredible happened. I started to relax. No one seemed to care that I was dressed as a woman. In fact, many people complimented my costume, assuming it was just that, a costume. But for me, it wasn't a costume. It was a glimpse into the life I longed for, a life where I could be myself without fear of judgment. That night was a turning point for me. It was the first time I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could live authentically. The road to self-acceptance, however, was not a straight one. After that Halloween, I began dressing up more frequently in private, but the shame and guilt still lingered. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something wrong with me, that I was living a lie. Society's rigid gender norms were like an invisible cage, keeping me trapped in an identity that wasn't mine. I tried to suppress my feelings, throwing myself into my studies and social life, hoping that the more I conformed to my male persona, the easier it would become. But it didn't work. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the yearning to express my true self was always there, simmering beneath the surface. It wasn't until I met a friend in college, let's call her Sarah, that things began to change. Sarah was open-minded, kind, and fiercely supportive of the LGBTQ community. One night, after a few too many drinks, I confided in her about my struggles with gender identity. I expected her to react with confusion, maybe even disgust, but instead, she simply listened. "I think you're incredibly brave," she said softly, her eyes filled with understanding. "You deserve to be happy, to be yourself." Her words hit me like a wave of relief. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, heard, and accepted for who I was. Sarah became my confidant, encouraging me to explore my identity further. She even helped me pick out clothes and practice makeup, teaching me the tricks of the trade. With her support, I began to venture out in public more often, this time not as a costume, but as my true self. I started small, trips to the grocery store, coffee shops, and parks, each outing a test of my courage. And with each successful outing, my confidence grew. But the road to self-acceptance was still fraught with challenges. There were stares, whispers, and even the occasional rude comment. Every negative reaction felt like a blow, reminding me that the world wasn't as accepting as I had hoped. But I refused to let it deter me. I had spent too many years hiding, too many years pretending to be someone I wasn't. It was time to live authentically, no matter the cost. As I became more comfortable with my feminine identity, the question of transitioning began to weigh heavily on my mind. Was I a crossdresser, or was there something deeper at play? The more I embraced my femininity, the more I realized that this wasn't just about clothes or makeup. It was about who I was at my core. I spent countless hours researching gender identity, reading stories of transgender women who had gone through the transition process. Their stories resonated with me on a level I couldn't ignore. The more I read, the more I realized that I was transgender, that I wasn't just a man who enjoyed dressing as a woman, but a woman trapped in a man's body. But the decision to transition was not an easy one. I knew that transitioning would mean confronting my deepest fears, coming out to my family, facing potential rejection, and navigating a world that wasn't always kind to transgender individuals. The stakes were high, and the path ahead was uncertain. I spent months agonizing over the decision, going back and forth between fear and hope. But in the end, the desire to live authentically, to finally be at peace with myself, outweighed the fear. With trembling hands, I made an appointment with a gender therapist, the first step on my journey towards womanhood. Coming out to my family was, without a doubt, one of the hardest things I've ever done. My parents had always been loving and supportive, but they were also deeply rooted in traditional values. I wasn't sure how they would react to the news that their son was actually their daughter. The night I told them, I could barely speak. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat them down in the living room, my hands shaking. I had rehearsed what I was going to say 100 times, but now, faced with the reality of the moment, the words wouldn't come. I need to tell you something, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. They looked at me expectantly, concern etched on their faces. I'm transgender, I finally said, my voice breaking. I've felt like a girl for as long as I can remember, and I've decided to transition. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stared at me, their expressions unreadable. I could feel the weight of their shock, the confusion swirling in their minds. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice trembling. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. This is who I am. I've known for a long time. My father remained silent, his face a mask of disbelief. My mother, however, took a deep breath and reached for my hand. "We love you," she said softly. "We may not understand this fully, but we love you, and we'll support you." Her words were a balm to my soul, easing the fear and anxiety that had been building for weeks. My father, while more reserved, eventually came around, though it took time for him to process the news. Coming out to my friends was a mixed experience. Some were supportive, embracing me with open arms, while others distanced themselves, unable or unwilling to understand. But I was prepared for that. I knew that not everyone would accept me, and I had come to terms with the fact that living authentically meant losing some people along the way. Starting hormone replacement therapy, HRT, was a pivotal moment in my journey. The first time I held those tiny pills in my hand, I felt a surge of emotion, fear, excitement, hope. This was the beginning of my physical transformation, the first step towards aligning my body with my true identity. The changes came slowly at first, a slight softening of my skin, a gradual redistribution of fat, a small but noticeable change in the shape of my face. But each change, no matter how small, felt monumental. For the first time in my life, I was beginning to see a reflection in the mirror that felt right. But the physical changes weren't without their challenges. My body was still very much in the early stages of transition, and I often felt stuck in an in-between state, not quite man, but not fully woman either. It was a difficult period, filled with moments of doubt and frustration. There were days when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing, whether I would ever truly pass as a woman in society. But each time those doubts crept in, I reminded myself of how far I had come, how much happier and more at peace I felt since beginning my transition. And slowly but surely, the changes continued. My breasts began to develop, my body became more feminine, and my confidence grew. One of the most important lessons I learned during my transition was the power of community. In the early stages of my journey, I felt incredibly isolated, convinced that no one could truly understand what I was going through. But as I connected with other transgender individuals, both online and in person, I realized that I wasn't alone. I joined support groups, attended transgender meetups, and found solace in the stories of others who had walked the same path. Their courage, resilience, and determination inspired me, giving me the strength to continue even when the road ahead seemed daunting. In these spaces, I found acceptance, understanding, and a sense of belonging that I had never experienced before. It was in these communities that I learned to truly embrace my identity, to celebrate my femininity, and to take pride in the woman I was becoming. Today, as I sit here writing this memoir, I can say with confidence that I am living my truth. The road from boyhood to womanhood has been long, winding, and often painful, but it has also been filled with moments of profound joy and self-discovery. I am no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be someone I'm not. I am a woman, and I am proud of who I am. There are still challenges, of course. Society is not always kind to transgender individuals, and I still face discrimination and prejudice on a regular basis. But I am stronger now, more resilient, and more confident in my identity than I ever was before. Looking back on my journey, I realized that every step, every moment of doubt, every tear shed, every victory, no matter how small, has been worth it. I have become the person I was always meant to be, and that is something no one can take away from me. To anyone reading this who may be struggling with their own gender identity, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your journey may be difficult, and the road ahead may seem uncertain, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. You deserve to live authentically, to embrace your true self, and to find happiness in who you are. This is my story, but it is also the story of countless others who have walked this path before me and who will walk it after me. It is a story of resilience, of courage, and of the unshakable belief that we all deserve to be who we are, without shame or fear. As I move forward into the next chapter of my life, I do so with a heart full of hope and a spirit unburdened by the weight of hiding. I am a woman, and I am proud of the person I have become. My journey is far from over, but I am no longer afraid of what lies ahead. I am ready to face the world, not as the person I was expected to be, but as the person I truly am. And that, more than anything, is the greatest victory of all. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.